I'm 91 years old, and there is something I need to tell you before it's too late, something people don't like to say out loud, something I learned the hard way. After losing time I can never get back. If you're afraid to live alone, don't run toward a nursing home just because the world tells you it's the safe choice. Because sometimes what feels safe on the outside quietly steals your life on the inside. Sit with me for a moment. Imagine an old man like me, sitting by a window watching the same tree every day, the same people walking past, the same quiet room. But inside, there is a storm of memories, of things left unsaid, of moments that never came back. You see, fear is a strange thing. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, "You can't do this alone. You need someone, you need a place where you'll be taken care of." And before you realize it, you've handed over your independence, your choices, your rhythm of life, to a place that doesn't know your story. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to wake you up gently, like someone who has already walked the road you're standing at. When I was younger, I thought growing old meant losing control. I thought one day I would become weak, dependent, and that the only way to survive would be to let others decide for me. I was wrong. So very wrong. The truth is, growing old is not about losing your life. It's about learning how to hold on to it differently. I remember the day my friend James, he was 84 at the time, decided to move into a nursing home. His children told him it was for his own good. They said he would be safer there, people around him, doctors nearby, meals on time, everything organized, and at first it sounded comforting. But I visited him 3 months later, and I will never forget what I saw. He was sitting in a chair, staring at nothing. His eyes were not the same. The spark, the life, it was fading not because he was sick, but because he had slowly stopped living. He looked at me and said, "Something I carry in my heart even today." He said, "I didn't realize they were taking care of my body, but no one was taking care of my soul." That sentence, it stayed with me, because that's the danger no one talks about. When you give up living alone out of fear, you don't just change your location, you change your identity. You go from being a person with choices to someone following a schedule. You go from deciding when to wake up to being told when it's time. You go from cooking your own meal, even if it's simple, to eating what's placed in front of you, and slowly, quietly, you stop feeling like yourself. Now listen to me carefully. I am not saying all nursing homes are bad. No. Some people truly need that level of care. Some situations leave no choice. But I am talking to you, the one who still has strength, still has a mind that thinks, still has a heart that feels, but is scared of being alone. Don't confuse being alone with being abandoned. They are not the same being. Alone can be powerful. It can be peaceful. It can be the time when you finally hear your own thoughts, your own truth, your own voice. But being abandoned, that's when you lose connection, when no one checks on you, when you feel forgotten. And here is the truth most people miss. You don't fix loneliness by changing your address. You fix it by changing how you live. I spent years afraid of silence, afraid of empty rooms, afraid of waking up and not hearing another voice. So I kept surrounding myself with people, noise, distractions, but I was still lonely, because loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from feeling unseen, unheard, unvalued, and no building, no institution, no organized place can fix that if it's inside you. What changed my life was not moving somewhere else. It was learning how to live with myself. I started small. I began talking to neighbors, just simple conversations, a smile, a good morning. It sounds like nothing, but it builds something real. I created a routine, not one forced on me, but one I chose. I would wake up, make my own tea, sit by the window, write down my thoughts, even if no one would ever read them. I started walking, even if it was just a few steps, because movement reminds you you're still alive. And slowly, that fear of being alone, it started to fade, because I wasn't alone anymore. I was with myself, and for the first time, I learned how to be my own company. Let me tell you something honestly. The world will try to make you believe that aging means becoming less capable, less important, less needed, but that is not true. Aging means you carry stories, lessons, wisdom that no young person has yet. You are not becoming less. You are becoming deeper. And depth requires space. It requires silence sometimes. It requires moments where you are not distracted, so you can understand who you really are. If you run away from living alone, you may also run away from discovering that I've seen strong people, move into places where everything is done for them, and within a year, they lose their strength, not just physical, but emotional. Because when you stop doing things for yourself, you slowly forget that you can, and that is more dangerous than being alone. You don't lose your life all at once. You lose it piece by piece, one decision at a time, until one day you wake up and realize you are no longer living, you are just existing. And I don't want that for you, not if you still have a choice. So if you are afraid to live alone, don't ignore that fear, but don't let it control you either. Understand it, sit with it. Ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? Is it silence? Is it falling sick? Is it not having someone around? Because each of those fears has a different solution, and none of them require you to give up your independence completely. You can build support without losing yourself. You can stay connected without giving up your freedom. You can feel safe without being controlled, but you have to be willing to take responsibility for your life, even at this age, yes, even at 70. 80, because life doesn't end when you get older. It only ends when you stop living it. You see, when I left you a moment ago, I was not trying to scare you. I was trying to gently shake something inside you, because what I am about to say now, this is where most people quietly lose their life without even realizing it. I remember the night I truly felt fear for the first time. Real fear, not the kind you feel in a moment, but the kind that sits in your chest and doesn't leave. It was winter. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I had just come back from the hospital after a small fall. Nothing serious. They said, just be careful. They always say that, but when I closed the door behind me and stood there in that empty room, I felt it, that thought, what if something happens and no one is here? It's a simple thought, but it can grow into something very heavy. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept imagining worst-case situations, falling again, not being able to get up, calling for help and no one hearing me. And that's how it starts, not with reality, but with imagination. Fear paints pictures in your mind, and those pictures feel so real that you start making life decisions based on them. That's exactly what pushes people toward places they don't truly want to be, because they are not running toward comfort. They are running away from fear, and there's a big difference. I sat in that chair all night, staring at the clock, and I realized something important. If I let this fear grow, it will make decisions for me. And once fear starts deciding your life, you slowly stop living your own. So the next morning, instead of calling my children and saying, I think I need to move somewhere, I did something different, something small but powerful. I made a list, not of what I was afraid of, but of what I could control. You see, we spend too much time thinking about what might happen and very little time preparing for what we can actually do. So I wrote it down, what if I fall? Then I answered it, I can keep a phone near me at all times. I can install simple safety tools. I can tell my neighbor to check on me. What if I feel lonely? I can call someone. I can join a small local group. I can step outside and talk to someone. What if I get sick? I can keep emergency numbers ready. I can have regular checkups. I can prepare my home to make things easier. And slowly, something changed. The fear didn't disappear completely, no, but it lost its power because I wasn't helpless anymore. I had a plan. And let me tell you something, plans bring peace, not because they guarantee nothing will go wrong, but because they remind you, you are not powerless. This is what I want you to understand. Living alone does not mean living without support. That is the biggest misunderstanding. You don't have to lock yourself in a house and face everything by yourself. No, you build a system around you, a simple human system. I started by knowing my neighbors. Before that, they were just faces I passed by. But I made an effort. I knocked on one door, introduced myself, shared a small smile. Nothing big, but that one small step created a connection, then another. Soon, I wasn't just the old man in the house. I was someone people recognized, someone they greeted, someone they would notice if they didn't see for a few days. That's how you create safety, not by moving into a place full of strangers, but by building familiarity where you already are. And then I made my home safer. Simple things. I removed rugs that could cause me to slip. I added better lighting. I kept important things within reach. I placed a chair in areas where I might need to rest. Nothing expensive, nothing complicated, just thoughtful changes. You don't need a facility to feel safe. You need awareness. Then came the most important part, routine. People underestimate this, but routine is life. When you wake up without purpose, your mind starts to drift, and drifting minds often go toward fear. So I gave my days structure, not a strict schedule like a hospital, but a gentle rhythm. Morning tea, a short walk, a call to someone, reading, sitting in the sun. Small things, but they gave my day meaning. And meaning removes emptiness. I also started doing something I had never done before. I started talking to myself. Yes, it may sound strange to you, but listen. When you live alone, your inner voice becomes your companion, if that voice is kind. You feel supported. If that voice is harsh, you feel alone even when surrounded by people. So I learned to speak to myself gently, to say you're doing okay, to say you're still here, still trying. And that changed everything, because loneliness is not always about other people. Sometimes it's about your relationship with yourself. I know people who live in big houses, full of family and still feel alone. And I know people who live by themselves and feel at peace. The difference is not the number of people around you, it's the quality of connection, even with yourself. Now let me be honest with you, there were days, hard days, days when silence felt heavier, days when I missed voices, laughter, the noise of life. I won't lie to you and say it was always easy. But here's what I learned. Running away from those moments doesn't make them disappear. Facing them does. On those days, I didn't hide. I stepped outside. Even if I didn't feel like it, I called someone, even if it was just to say hello. I reminded myself, this feeling is temporary, and slowly those heavy days became lighter because I stopped giving them power. This is what I want you to take from this. Fear of living alone is not something you eliminate. It's something you manage, just like you manage your health, your habits, your thoughts. And when you learn to manage it no longer controls you. You start to see something beautiful. Freedom. The freedom to wake up when you want, to sit in silence without being told what to do, to live your life your way, even at this age. And that is something you should not give up easily. Because once it's gone, it's very hard to get back. I've seen it. I've seen people try to return to their old life after giving it up, and they struggle because they have forgotten how to be independent. And independence, once lost, takes time to rebuild. So before you make a decision out of fear, pause, ask yourself, am I choosing this, or is my fear choosing it for me? That one question can save you years you cannot get back. And I say this to you, not as someone who read it in a book, but as someone who stood at that same door with the same fear and chose to stay, to face it, to build a life around it, instead of running away from it. You know, this is the part people don't like to hear, but it is the part that changed my life the most. And maybe if you truly listen, it might change yours too, because the truth is, the fear of living alone is not always about being alone. Sometimes it is about who we are waiting for. I spent many years, without even realizing it, waiting for my children to visit more often. waiting for someone to call, waiting for someone to sit with me and ask, "How are you really doing?" And at first, it felt natural. After all, they are family. We raise them, we sacrifice for them, we give them everything we have. So somewhere deep inside, we believe one day they will come back and fill our empty spaces. But life doesn't always work that way. And this is not me blaming them. No, not at all. They have their own lives, their own struggles, their own responsibilities, just like we once did. But no one prepares you for this part. The quiet shift, the moment when your role changes from being needed to being remembered. It happens slowly. At first they call, every day, every few days, then once a week. And before you know it, you are the one waiting for the phone to ring. I remember sitting by that old table, looking at the phone, telling myself, they must be busy, they'll call later. And sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't. And each time it didn't ring, something small inside me would sink. Not anger, not even sadness, just a quiet realization. Life had moved on without me at the center of it. That realization can break you if you don't understand it, because if your happiness depends on someone else showing up, then every delay, every silence feels like rejection, and slowly you begin to feel alone. Even if you are not, that's when people start thinking, maybe if I move somewhere where people are always around, I won't feel this way. But let me tell you something honestly. You can sit in a room full of people and still feel invisible, because what you are missing is not noise, it is connection. Connection cannot be forced, it cannot be scheduled, and it cannot be replaced by just being physically near others. I had to learn this the hard way. One day, I stopped waiting, not because I didn't love my family, but because I realized my life cannot be paused until someone else has time for me. That was a painful truth, but also a freeing one, because the moment I stopped waiting, I started living again. I began to fill my own days with my own choices. I stopped counting how many times the phone rang and started asking, what can I do today that makes me feel alive? It was not easy, I won't lie. At first, it felt like letting go, like accepting something I didn't want to accept. But over time, I understood something deeper. Love does not always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it is quiet, distant, imperfect, and that does not mean it is not there. But we must not build our entire life around waiting for it, because waiting can become a habit, and habits shape your life. I've seen people, good people, spend years sitting in the same chair, looking at the same door, hoping someone will walk in. And when they don't, they feel forgotten. But the truth is, they have forgotten themselves. They have forgotten that their life still belongs to them, that their days are still theirs to live, that their story is not over. This is what I want you to understand. If you are afraid of living alone, ask yourself honestly, are you afraid of being alone, or are you afraid that no one will come for you? Because those are two very different fears, and only one of them can be healed by others. The other must be healed by you. I had to sit with that question for a long time, and when I finally answered it honestly, it changed everything. I realized I was not afraid of the house being empty. I was afraid that I didn't matter anymore, that I had already lived my life, and now I was just passing time. That thought is heavier than loneliness, because it takes away your purpose, and without purpose, even a full house feels empty. So I asked myself, is my life really over, or have I just stopped living it? That question woke me up, because the truth is, as long as you are breathing, your life is not over. It may be different, slower, quieter, but it is still yours, and you still have the right to live it fully. So instead of waiting for someone to bring life into my days, I started bringing life into them myself. I did small things. I began writing letters, not because I expected replies, but because it made me feel connected. I started talking to people in the park, even if it was just a few words. I listened, really listened, to others. And in doing so, I felt heard too. I found meaning not in being needed, but in being present, and something beautiful happened. the more I stopped chasing connection, the more it started coming naturally, because I was no longer desperate for it. I was open to it. There's a difference. Desperation pushes people away. Openness invites them in, and that applies at any age, even at 91. You are not too old to create connection. You are not too old to feel seen. But you must not sit and wait for it to happen. You must move even a little, reach out even a little, live even a little. Because life does not come to those who wait quietly. It comes to those who are willing to meet it halfway. Now listen carefully. I am not telling you to stop loving your family or expecting anything at all. No. Love them always, but don't depend on them for your entire happiness. That is too heavy a burden for anyone to carry, and it will only leave you disappointed. Your happiness must have more than one source. It must come from within, from your daily life, from small moments, from simple things. That is how you protect yourself from loneliness. That is how you stay alive, even when the world becomes quieter. And this is why running to a nursing home just to escape loneliness will not solve the real problem, because you are not fixing the root. You are only changing the environment, and wherever you go, your feelings, your expectations, your habits, they go with you. So if you don't change those, nothing truly changes. You know, there is something even deeper than loneliness, something people don't talk about until it's already slipping away, and that is dignity, not the kind you show to the world, but the quiet kind, the one you feel inside when you can still do things for yourself, when you can still decide, still choose, still say, this is my life. I didn't understand how important that was until I almost lost it. There was a time after that fall I told you about, when my family became very worried. They started calling more often, checking on me, asking the same question again and again. Are you sure you're okay living alone? At first, it sounded like love, and maybe it was, but hidden inside that question, there was something else. Doubt, not just theirs. Doubt, my doubt. And doubt is dangerous because it doesn't shout. It slowly weakens you from the inside. I started questioning myself. Maybe they're right. Maybe I can't handle this anymore. Maybe I'm just being stubborn. And the more I thought like that, the smaller I started to feel, not physically, but as a person. That's how it begins. You don't lose your independence in one big moment. You slowly hand it over, piece by piece, because you stop trusting yourself. And one afternoon, I almost made that decision. I sat with my son, and we were looking at brochures, pictures of clean rooms, smiling staff, people sitting together in organized spaces. Everything looked perfect, safe, controlled, predictable, and for a moment, I felt relief. No more worrying, no more being alone. Everything will be taken care of. But then something inside me became very quiet, too quiet. And I remember looking at those pictures and asking myself a simple question. Where am I in all of this? Not my body, not my bed, not my meals. Me, my freedom, my way of living. And the answer scared me because I couldn't see it. That's when I realized something that changed everything for me. Safety without freedom is not life. It is just a controlled existence. Now listen, I am not saying you should ignore your health or your limits. No, you must be wise. You must take care of yourself. But there is a difference between getting support and giving up control. Most people don't see that line until they've already crossed it. I've visited places like that many times. I've seen people sitting in rows waiting for meals, waiting for instructions, waiting for someone to tell them what to do next. And I don't blame the system. It's designed to manage many people at once. But in that system, individuality becomes smaller. Your habits, your timing, your little personal ways of living, they slowly disappear. And with them, a part of you disappears too. I remember an old woman I met there. She used to love gardening. She told me how she would wake up early, talk to her plants, spend hours taking care of them. Her eyes lit up when she spoke about it. But then she looked down and said softly, "They don't have space for that here."
That sentence broke something inside me.
Because it wasn't about plants. It was about losing the small things that made her, her. And that is the cost people don't calculate. They think about safety, food, medical care, but they forget about identity, about purpose, about the little things that make life feel like your own. When you live alone, even with fear, you still wake up in your own world. You still decide how your day begins. You still choose what matters to you. And that choice gives you strength. But when you give that away even for comfort, you must be very careful, because comfort can quietly turn into dependency, and dependency, if it grows too much, becomes very hard to reverse. I had to ask myself honestly, am I truly unable to live alone, or am I just afraid? And the answer was clear. I was afraid, not incapable. And fear should never be the reason you give away your life. It should be the reason you prepare better, think wiser, and build stronger support around you. That's what I did. Instead of leaving my home, I strengthened it. I made sure I had help available when I needed it, not constant control, but available support. There's a big difference. I arranged regular check-ins, simple calls, visits, not to monitor me, but to stay connected. I kept emergency tools within reach, not because I expected the worst, but because I respected the possibility. And most importantly, I kept doing things myself, even when it was slower, even when it took more effort, because every small action reminded me, I can still do this, and that feeling is priceless. You see, dignity is not something people give you. It is something you protect through your choices, through your actions, through your willingness to keep living actively, not passively. I know it's tempting to choose the easier path, to let someone else take over, to rest. But there is a difference between resting and surrendering your life, and many people don't realize when that line is crossed until they feel it, that quiet loss of control, that subtle feeling that their life is no longer fully theirs. And by then, going back becomes difficult because they have adapted to being taken care of. And the longer you stay in that state, the harder it is to return to independence. That's why I'm telling you this now, why you still have a choice, why you still have strength, why your mind is still clear. Don't give away your independence too quickly. Protect it, even if it requires effort, even if it feels uncomfortable at times, because that effort keeps you alive, not just breathing, but living, you see, after everything I have told you, after the fear, the waiting, the quiet loss of control. There is still one truth that stands above all the rest, and it took me almost my entire life to understand it. The greatest danger of growing old is not being alone. It is believing that your life no longer matters. That thought is heavier than any silence, deeper than any loneliness, and more dangerous than any physical weakness. Because once a person starts to feel, I am no longer needed, something inside them begins to fade, not all at once, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. I remember a man. His name was Robert. He lived a few houses away from me. Strong man. Worked his whole life. Raised a family. Did everything he was supposed to do. But when he retired and his children moved away, something changed. He stopped waking up early. Stopped going outside. Stopped talking to people. At first, everyone thought, he's just resting. He deserves it. But weeks turned into months. And months turned into years. And Robert slowly disappeared while still being alive. I would see him. Sometimes sitting in the same spot, staring into space like he was waiting for something, or maybe for nothing at all. One day, I gathered the courage, and I sat next to him. We didn't talk at first, just silence. And then he said something I will never forget. He said, when no one needs you anymore, you start to wonder why you're still here. That sentence, it stayed with me because I realized this is what breaks people, not age, not weakness, but the loss of purpose. And this is where many people make a mistake. They think purpose comes from big things, from work, from raising children, from being busy. But when those things change, they feel empty. Because they never learned that purpose can live in small things too. After that conversation, I went home and I sat quietly. I asked myself, if everything I used to do is no longer part of my life, what is left? And for a moment, I had no answer. That scared me, but instead of running from that fear, I stayed with it and slowly.
Purpose is not something you lose. It is something you stop looking for.
I started paying attention to the smallest parts of my day, the way the sunlight came through the window,
The sound of birds in the morning, the feeling of holding a warm cup of tea.
these things. They may seem small to you, but when you truly notice them, they remind you you are still here, still experiencing, still living. And then I did something even more important. I started giving not money, not big gestures, just simple human presence. I listened to people, really listened. I spoke to strangers with kindness. I shared my stories, not to impress, but to connect. And something beautiful happened. People began to respond, not because I was young or strong, but because I was real, because I was present, because I still had something to offer. And that's when I understood your value does not disappear with age. It changes form. You may not be needed the same way you once, but you are still needed in ways you may not even realize. Your wisdom, your presence, your kindness. These things matter more than you think, but only if you choose to share them. If you hide, if you withdraw, if you convince yourself that your life is over, then yes, it will feel like it is, but that is not the truth. That is a story you are telling yourself. And stories can be changed. Living alone does not take away your purpose. Losing your willingness to live does. That is the real danger. Not the empty room, but the empty spirit. I had to make a decision, a simple one, but powerful. I decided that as long as I am breathing, I will live not perfectly, not without fear, but fully. I will wake up even if I feel tired. I will step outside even if I don't feel like it. I will speak even if no one is asking, because life does not wait for perfect conditions. It moves forward, with or without you, and you must decide if you are moving with it or watching pass you by. I stopped measuring my life by how many people needed me and started measuring it by how present I was in each moment, in each conversation, in each quiet breath. And suddenly, life didn't feel empty anymore. It felt enough, not because everything was perfect, but because I was there, truly there, living it. So if you are afraid of living alone, I understand. I have been there. But don't let that fear convince you that your life is over, or that your only option is to give it away, because you still have something precious, something many people lose without realizing. Choice. The choice to wake up and live your day your way. The choice to find meaning even in the smallest things. The choice to stay connected even if it requires effort. The choice to remain yourself. Don't give that up easily. Not out of fear, not out of doubt, not out of the quiet voice that tells you you are too old for this, because that voice is wrong. You are not too old to live. You are only too old to waste what time you have left. And now, let me sit with you one last time and tell you everything I have learned, not as advice, but as truth, the kind of truth that only time can teach, the kind that stays with you long after my voice fades. So now, after everything I have shared with you, after all the stories, the quiet truths, the things people don't usually say out loud, I want you to sit with me just for a little while longer. Not as someone watching a video, but as someone listening to a voice that has lived a long time, made mistakes, learned slowly, sometimes painfully, and now has nothing left to hide. I'm 91 years old, and when you reach this age, something changes inside you. You stop trying to impress people. You stop pretending everything is fine when it isn't. You stop chasing things that don't matter, and you start seeing life clearly, almost like a fog has lifted. And when that fog lifts, you begin to understand something very simple but very powerful. Most of the things we fear never truly happen the way we imagine them. And most of the things that actually shape our life come from the choices we make in quiet moments. Moments like the one you are in right now. Listening, thinking, feeling something inside your chest that you may not even be able to explain. That feeling, don't ignore it, because that's where truth lies. You see, when I look back at my life, I don't remember the big events as much as I remember the small decisions, the days I chose courage instead of comfort, the moments I chose to keep going, even when I felt weak, the times I chose to trust myself instead of giving my life away to fear. And I can tell you honestly, those moments, they made all the difference. Not money, not status, not what people thought of me, but those quiet choices when no one was watching. That is where life is built. And that is why I am speaking to you like this, not with fancy words, not with complicated ideas, but with something real. Because you don't need complexity right now. You need clarity if you are afraid to live alone. I understand that fear. I truly do. But I want you to ask yourself something gently, honestly. What am I really afraid of? Not the surface answer, not the easy one, but the real one. Is it fear of silence? Is it fear of being forgotten? Is it fear of losing control? Is it fear of something happening and no one being there? Because each of those fears deserves a real answer. Not avoidance, not running away, but understanding. When you understand your fear, you take away its power. And when you take away its power, you begin to live freely again. I wish someone had told me this when I was younger. I wasted years worrying about things that never happened. I gave too much importance to what others thought. I waited too long for people to show up in ways they never did. And in that waiting, I lost time I cannot get back. That is one of the hardest truths of growing. Old, you begin to see how much time was spent not living fully, and that's why I don't want that for you. Not anymore. You still have time, even if you think you don't. As long as you are here, as long as you are breathing, there is still something left for you, something meaningful, something real, but you have to be willing to live it, not perfectly, not without fear. But honestly, let me tell you something that may surprise you. The older I got, the more I realized life is not about being surrounded by people all the time. It is about being connected deeply, even if it's with just a few, or even with yourself. There were days when I sat alone in my house, complete silence around me, and instead of feeling empty, I felt peaceful, because I had learned how to sit with myself, how to listen to my thoughts without running from them, how to accept my past without regret controlling me. That kind of peace cannot be given to you by a place or a system or a building. It comes from within, and that is why no matter where you go, if you don't build that peace inside you, you will carry your restlessness with you, from one place to another, from one room to another, from one stage of life to another. I have seen people move into the most comfortable environments, with everything provided for them, and still feel empty, because comfort is not the same as fulfillment, and fulfillment comes from living with purpose, which brings me to the most important thing I want you to remember. Purpose. Don't let anyone tell you that your purpose ends at a certain age. That is one of the biggest lies we quietly accept. Your purpose does not disappear. It simply changes shape. Maybe you are no longer raising children. Maybe you are no longer working. Maybe the world no longer asks as much from you as it once did. But that does not mean you have nothing left to give. You still have your presence, your kindness, your words, your ability to make someone feel seen, even for a moment, and that matters more than you think. Sometimes purpose is as simple as calling someone who feels alone, smiling at a stranger, sharing a story that helps someone understand life a little better, being there, fully present in the moment you are in. These are not small things. They are everything. And the moment you begin to live like this, something shifts inside you. Life stops feeling like something you are losing and starts feeling like something you are still experiencing. Even now, even at this age, I wake up every morning not because I have to, but because I choose to open my eyes and say, I am still here, and that is enough to begin the day. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need everything figured out. You just need a willingness to continue, to take one step, even if it's small, to face one fear, even if it's uncomfortable, to stay present, even when your mind wants to run toward worry. This is how you build a life at any age, one honest moment at a time. Now let me say something to you very clearly from my heart. Do not give away your independence just because you are afraid. Do not hand over your life just because someone tells you it is easier. Do not step away from your own story before it is truly over, because once you do, it becomes very hard to return. And I don't want you to reach a point where you sit quietly and think, I gave up too soon. That thought carries a weight that is hard to describe. I have seen it in people's eyes, that quiet regret, that silent wish that they had trusted themselves just a little longer. You don't have to be perfect to live alone. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing to take responsibility for your life, to prepare where needed, to stay connected where possible, and to keep moving even when it feels slow, because slow movement is still movement, and movement is life. Remember this. You are not a burden. You are not finished. You are not someone who needs to disappear quietly into the background. You are a human being with a story, with value, with presence, and that does not change just because time has passed. If anything, it becomes more meaningful because you have seen more, felt more, understood more. Don't hide that. Don't silence that. Share it, live it, carry it with dignity. And when fear comes, because it will come, don't run from it. Sit with it, understand it, and then gently take your life back from it again and again, as many times as you need to. Because courage is not a one-time decision. It is something you practice every single day, in small ways, quiet ways, real ways. And before I leave you, I want to say one last thing, simple, but something I hope stays with you. One day, all of this will be over. The worries, the fears, the waiting, the questions, all of it. And when that day comes, the only thing that will matter is how you lived, not where you stayed, not how safe you felt, not what others decided for you, but how you chose to live with the time you were given. So don't let fear make that decision for you. Don't let loneliness define your path. Don't let doubt take away your voice. You still have a life right now, in this moment, and it is still yours. So live it, gently, bravely, honestly, even if it's not perfect, even if it's quiet, even if it's just one small step at a time. Because those small steps, they lead to something beautiful, a life that is truly yours. And when you look back one day, just like I am doing now, you will not feel regret. You will feel something else, something rare, something peaceful. You will feel that you lived, and that is all that ever truly mattered.